Since you're preaching to me like that, you must be great at your job. But you are just an old man with only middle school education. Well, go ahead and try talking to this guy on the phone. He's Spanish, by the way.
Having reached the retirement age, I was rehired as a part-timer. Connor, a new employee who boasts about graduating from Sorbonne University, told me to negotiate in Spanish, but I guess I don't like being bossed around. Hey, old man, speak up already. You were acting all high and mighty with your preaching, weren't you? All talk. Ha ha. Connor nudged my shoulder. I was getting really annoyed. I see. I took a deep breath and answered the phone. As Connor side-eyed me, his face turned pale. I am Joseph Wesley, 65 years old, recently retired after reaching the retirement age this year. For the hard work and dedication I demonstrated throughout my career, I was repeatedly asked to stay with the company even after the retirement age during my farewell visits. I was delighted to be recognized for my accomplishments, and after discussing it with my wife, we decided that I would join a well-known trading company that I was familiar with. At 65, I never thought I would have the opportunity for employment, but I was convinced that I still had a lot to offer. However, my wife and I had been also planning a trip abroad together.
You don't have to push yourself too hard, but you really love your work.
What are you talking about? It's you that I love more than anything in my life.
But are you really okay with it? Wouldn't you rather have a steady full-time position?
No, it's fine. I've already worked hard enough. From now on, I'll let the younger ones give their best. My wife understands my job, and she also understands how much I love it. But then, we finally had the opportunity to go on a trip abroad together. It would be our first trip since our honeymoon. So during the interview at the company, I requested for a flexible part-time position, which would allow me to take time off for the trip.
Oh, of course. No problem at all. We're just glad to have you, Mr. Wesley.
The company gladly accepted my request. They assured me that they would adjust my schedule as needed. And so, thankfully, I was able to work as a part-timer. At the new company, I saw some familiar faces from my previous business dealings, which made the work easier. Of course, I had a lot to learn, but I compensated for my age with the experience I had gained over the years. Those around me appreciated my diligent efforts, just as they did before.
You're really efficient, Mr. Wesley. Impressive.
Well, I am getting older. I used to learn things even faster back in the day.
Don't worry, let me handle what you're unsure of. I've also made some progress myself.
In terms of the number of years spent in the company, technically they were my seniors. But those I had already known from my previous work were very friendly toward me. Some who knew of my experience at another company would even come to me for advice when they faced difficulties. In such cases, I would confidently share my own experience without hesitation. It brought me joy to know that my experience of an old man could be helpful to others. I really enjoy working. I'm so lucky to have this job in this industry. I was leading a fulfilling life. One day, the company's new recruits came back from their 1-month training and were assigned to various departments. Our department also had a new recruit. We all gathered in the middle of the office as instructed for a brief meeting.
Everyone, we have a new recruit joining us today. Please give him a warm welcome.
The department head encouraged the new recruit to introduce himself. He stepped forward. He looked mildly attractive, dressed in a stylish suit. He began to speak.
Let me introduce myself.
Is that French? The whole department tilted their heads in confusion. The new recruit suddenly started speaking in French, but it was difficult to make out what he said, and no one understood.
I'm sorry. I was at Sorbonne for a while, so let me introduce myself again. My name is Connor Taylor. I'm very pleased to meet you all.
The new recruit, Connor bowed his head. Although surprised to hear him speak French like that, everyone applauded. Connor smiled proudly at people's surprised faces, misunderstanding something.
I'm sorry, ha. Sometimes I just speak French like that, without realizing. During my time at Sorbonne,
Connor continued to talk about himself for about 5 minutes. He repeatedly mentioned being a graduate of Sorbonne and showcased his proficiency in French to impress everyone.
and I am?
It's about time to start work, right? Let's wrap up the introduction now. Well then, Mr. Taylor, nice to have you on board.
Yes, thank you. I'm looking forward to working with everyone.
The team leader interrupted Connor and told him to start working. Connor responded with a radiant smile. From that day on, there wasn't a single day in the department where Connor's presence wasn't a topic of conversation. Every day, Connor would try to speak French. While his proactive attitude was appreciated, he was frequently dissed to bring someone at work. So everyone would force a smile, but inside they were barely putting up. Over time, it became apparent that Connor's supposedly proficient French was actually not that good.
Well, I've been communicating solely in French during my time at Sorbonne, so it just slips out.
Although Connor said that, even for native French speakers, his French was sometimes difficult to comprehend. However, given Connor's self-proclaimed expertise and the atmosphere around him, no one felt comfortable telling him that they couldn't understand what he was saying. So even when they didn't understand him, they would nod along and somehow continued the conversation. One day, Connor came to talk to me as well.
It's a beautiful day.
It seemed like he was asking something, but I couldn't make out what he was saying in French. I found myself tilting my head in confusion. What did you say just now?
It's a beautiful day.
Connor tried to repeat himself, but his pronunciation and rhythm remained the same, making it completely incomprehensible. But I managed to catch the word school. Still, when he spoke in French again, I couldn't grasp the meaning. So I asked Connor, can I ask you to speak in English? I tried to smile amiably, but upon seeing my face, Connor clicked his tongue in annoyance.
Ha, you don't understand French? Why is an old geezer who can't even speak French working here? In this company, we are expected to know some French,
Connor mocked me overtly. Unfortunately, there was nobody else around at that moment. Taking advantage of this situation, Connor lightly nudged my shoulder.
Old man, where did you go to college? Even in a British university, you should have learned at least some French, right?
Well, actually, I only completed middle school. As for my education,
What? Middle school? Are you kidding me? Why did you join this company then?
Connor burst into laughter, tears streaming down his face.
Wow, seriously? Is this company so desperate for manpower that they hire middle school graduate who can't even speak French? That's just pathetic. Oh, I get it now. You must be working as a janitor, right?
While laughing like that, Connor walked away from me as if he had no further business with me. This incident marked a turning point in Connor's attitude towards me. He would snicker behind my back and say something in French when we ran into each other. I still couldn't understand what he was saying in French, but I could tell from his demeanor that it was mocking. It seemed that he somehow found out I was a part-timer, and his behavior gradually worsened. But over the years, I had encountered many people like Connor. Though it wasn't completely unaffected, I tried to handle the situation maturely, not letting it bother me too much. It's not affecting my work, and knowing that kid, he'll get bored and stop eventually. With this lighthearted mindset, I continued to enjoy my work as usual, spent time with my wife, and although Connor's presence made things a little difficult, I still led a happy life, just like before. A few days later,
Mr. Wesley,
"Oh, boss, what can I do for you?"
well, there's something I'd like to ask you. Can you take a look at this?
The boss handed me a document. It was about a contract with a major French company called ST Corporation, a globally prominent company with branch offices all over the world. I had heard about this company before.
They have numerous branch offices, so I thought of asking you, Mr. Wesley.
Are you sure it's all right to entrust such a significant task to a mere part-time worker like me?
Oh, there you go again, Mr. Wesley. I trust you. Oh, right, Taylor. Hey, Taylor.
The boss called for Connor, and he immediately responded, glancing at me with a slight frown. That expression on his face changed from confusion to anger as he heard the boss's words.
What is it, boss?
Well, Taylor, you speak French, right? So, assist Mr. Wesley with this proposal. Observe how he handles it and learn from him.
Huh, you mean I'll be working under Mr. Wesley as his assistant.
Well, Taylor, since we might give you a similar assignment in the future, so, Mr. Wesley, I'm counting on you.
Yes, understood.
The boss happily walked away from our department office, and I headed towards the printer to make copies of the document. In the background, I heard Connor muttering to himself.
Why do I have to? Why with this old guy?
Upon hearing those words, I let out a sigh and turned to face Connor, looking him in the eye to reason with him. Whether you like it or not, work is work. I'm counting on you. As the boss said, you may be given similar assignments in the future, so pay attention. Here are your copies. I'll reserve the conference room for us. Wait for me. Connor looked discontented. I handed him the copies of the document without saying anything, then proceeded to reserve the conference room. I told Connor when we could use the room, and while waiting I went to the document room to get some materials. After quickly finding the desired documents, I returned to the department office, but Connor was no longer there. The staff there told me that he had already headed to the conference room. I grabbed my laptop and went to the conference room myself.
You're so slow. I've been waiting here.
Connor muttered as I opened the door. His attitude was completely different from when the boss was around, and it frustrated me. But I said to myself, he's still young. He must be unhappy about working with me. I opened the laptop on the desk and showed him additional documents. I went to get other documents. We're dealing with a big company. The British way may not work, so we need a lot of information. It's important to have information, I explained, handing the documents to Connor. Take a look at these. Make sure to go through them. The documents were forcefully taken from my hand. Connor snatched them with a defiant attitude.
Why should I be an assistant to an old man like you? Can't even speak French. Hey, do you know how to use that laptop? Need me to teach you how to use the keyboard? He taunted.
I know, so it's fine, I replied, clenching my fist as strongly as possible to control myself. I thought, what the heck? He's still a kid, and it's natural for him to rebel and probably make mistakes at work too. I had seen him work diligently on regular occasions, so I believed he'd give his best this time as well. If he could carry through this important task, then it'd be fine. With that in mind, I suppressed my anger at Connor's words. And now that Connor had finished reading through the documents, we discussed how to proceed with the negotiations. We can see from these documents that this company's strength lies in this aspect, and they are currently interested in this area. So we should proceed like this, and...
No, there's a better way. If it were up to me, I would do.
But there's a problem with that approach.
That problem hasn't occurred yet, right? Besides, the losses would be minimal anyway.
What are you talking about? Our losses may be minimal, but the other company would suffer a lot. That's why we should.
Huh? No. Are you stupid? If we do that, our profit will be much less for so much work.
Connor was consistently opposed to my opinions. Not once did he nod in agreement during our discussion. I tried to remain calm, thinking he might have some good ideas. But all of Connor's suggestions had flaws. They were focused solely on our company's benefits and far from being something the other company could possibly accept. Time passed without us reaching a decision, and Connor, seemingly irritated by the situation, raised his voice at me, who didn't meet his expectations.
This idea is not good. Seriously, these are nothing but useless suggestions from an old guy with little education. Your thinking is too dim, old man.
I'm your senior. You shouldn't speak like that at work.
Wesley, you're just a part-timer, right? How can a part-timer be somebody's senior? I work full-time here, you know.
Whether I'm a part-timer or not is irrelevant. Above all, work is work. Do it properly.
Fine, whatever.
We continue typing what we agreed upon, finalizing the document to submit to the manager. As I was about to fill in the section related to phone negotiations, Connor inserted his name there without asking me.
Mr. Wesley, you can't speak French, can you? Leave it to me. Unlike someone with only middle school education, I have actual experience in the field.
Connor continued typing with a smug attitude. He even started filling in details that hadn't been finalized without uttering a word to me. I felt something snapping inside of me. Cut it out. This is not a joke. Initially startled by my shouting, Connor quickly regained his composure and stood up to face me, positioning himself so as to look down on me from above.
And you, old man, you can't even speak French, yet you take on a job like this with your low education level. The only reason the manager treats you with respect is because of your age, but it's disgusting to see him groveling. Why don't you go to the warehouse and do something more suitable for a middle school dropout like sorting out papers? Ha ha ha.
Driven by Connor's momentum, I also stood up. I am, in fact, your senior. Is that how a professional should speak? Using words that make your colleagues feel uncomfortable? What about your conduct as a human being? Connor flinched at my loud voice. He must have been shocked seeing me, who had rarely raised my voice, getting angry. But I didn't care how he reacted and pointed at the documents on the desk, growing even angrier at Connor. You haven't even properly reviewed the documents. You don't know anything about the other company, do you? You haven't shown any effort to research or even ask me any questions. Understanding your business partner is the very basics. Haven't you even been taught the basics? At my words, Connor's face turned red, and he closed his notebook computer. Then he left the meeting room, taking only his computer with him. As he departed, he let out a loud sigh.
If you complain so much, then do everything by yourself. Just an old part-timer.
Wait. I tried to stop him, but Connor went on. After seeing him vanish into the hallway, I regained my composure. I took a deep breath and sat alone in the quiet meeting room, reflecting on the confrontation. Perhaps I should have approached the situation with more calmness. I felt a tinge of regret. The next day, despite our heated argument, Connor came up to me with a self-satisfied expression.
Good morning, Mr. Wesley.
Has he already reset his emotions? Well, look at him go. Impressive. Impressed by Connor's change of attitude, I greeted him cheerfully. Good morning, Taylor. About yesterday. Before I could finish my sentence, Connor interrupted and handed me a document. I took it while looking at him, feeling confused.
I've already taken care of the work. Unlike part-timers, we full-timers are efficient.
What is this?
It's the document we worked on yesterday. Did you forget already?
It was what we had agreed on amid our heated exchange. He already prepared the document. I'm relieved it's not something we haven't decided on. With that in mind, I proceeded to review it. But I noticed something odd about some figures. I checked multiple times. 1, 2, 3. Witnessing my desperate effort to confirm the details, Connor burst into laughter, clutching his stomach.
Are you nitpicking on a document made by the bloody new guy? As a graduate of Sorbonne, I wouldn't make mistakes, you know. Besides, I've already sent it over there.
You've sent it to ST Corporation.
Well, of course, I'm efficient, you know.
I was taken aback by Connor's words. I couldn't help but raising my voice, despite what happened the day before and the regret I felt. Hey, the figures here are wrong. If we proceed like this, the company will incur a loss of $1 billion.
Huh?
My voice reverberated through the office. And right that, another sound startled both of us, further intensifying the atmosphere. It was the sound of an internal call. I quickly picked up the phone. Yes, this is Wesley, ex-sex department.
Hello. Is Taylor there? We have a call from Mesty's Spanish branch.
It was for Connor. I handed the phone over to him. I watched Connor nervously because I couldn't hear his Spanish interlocutor's voice from the other end of the line. Connor spoke in French. He was repeating the same words several times, but then he switched to broken Spanish. Perhaps this Spanish person didn't understand French. As I watched Connor anxiously, suddenly I heard shouting from the other end, followed by the sound of the phone being abruptly hung up. Connor looked bewildered as he put the phone down. I lightly tapped his shoulder without saying anything. What did they say? I asked. In that instant, Connor's face turned ferocious, and he swatted my hand away.
Don't mess with me. It's your fault, old man. You didn't make the decision and send the document yesterday.
At Connor's words, I unconsciously took a heavy breath, but this time, I spoke calmly and firmly. Don't blame others. It's due to your reckless action. For now, tell me what they said.
Shut up. I'm trying to sort things out right now.
You didn't understand?
Shut up. I only know little Spanish, but I can understand the words.
I placed my hand on his shoulder, trying to calm him down. Take a deep breath. Next time you talk to someone, make sure to take notes. And when you don't understand, let me take over. It's important as a professional to admit when you don't understand.
Then you do it, old man.
Connor interrupted me, snapping at me.
Don't boss me around, you low-educated old man. Instead of spouting unnecessary lectures, why don't you focus on your work?
Connor pointed at the phone and laughed at me. It was a mocking laugh, as if he was belittling me.
Come on, make the call. If you're soaking on preaching to me, you must excel at the job, right? You high school dropout, low-educated old man. Well, they don't speak English, though.
Connor's words became sharper and more piercing with each passing moment. But we didn't have time for such things now. We were in the middle of work. I glanced at the clock. We were running out of time. Without any other choice, I reluctantly pressed the button on the phone.
Hello. This is ST Corporation Spanish branch, a voice said in Spanish.
Hello. This is Joseph Wesley at Thomas Company in the UK. I would like to speak with.
Oh, yes. Please hold on for a moment. The voice replied in Spanish.
I glanced briefly at Connor. He had widened his eyes and was staring at me, his mouth agape. He was clearly surprised that I could speak Spanish.
Hello? I'm sorry I hung up on you earlier, but I didn't understand your Spanish.
I apologize for the young fellow who called earlier. This is Wesley speaking.
Oh, great. Finally, someone who knows Spanish. I called because I had some concerns about the document you sent this morning.
So I explained that there were errors in the document. I apologized earnestly and told him that a new document would be sent right away. Fortunately, they were still studying the document and hadn't finalized anything yet, so it was okay. With everything clarified, I expressed my gratitude and ended the call. Phew. Thankfully, we still made it in time. Then, I looked straight at Connor. You know, he said he couldn't understand your Spanish.
But I can speak
Before Connor could finish his sentence, the internal line rang again. Connor flinched, his body tensing up.
Hello, we have a lot of calls for Mesti's branch offices in China, Italy, Germany.
I looked at Connor, and his face was pale. It was a pitiful sight. I quickly understood. Except for French, Connor couldn't handle any other languages. I hurriedly asked to be connected to the callers one by one. Hello, this is Wesley speaking. Now, I started conversing with the person on the other end in Chinese. I didn't have time to observe Connor's reaction. China, Italy, Germany. I dealt with each call in a different language, and by the time the last call ended, a considerable amount of time had passed. Finally, I took a deep breath and sat down in my chair. I quickly copied the notes I had taken onto my notebook. I needed to contact each of our departments concerned before I forgot the details. Taylor, can you redo the document with the correct figures? Let's hurry and send it to each branch.
Yes.
I noticed Connor's lackluster response and finally looked at him. His face lacked its usual vigor, showing his frustration about his mistake. As Connor typed on the computer, he threw a question at me without looking at my face.
Exactly how many languages do you speak?
About 10 languages, I'd say. I know some of the callers from my previous company. I explained the situation, and they quickly understood. The phone calls went very well. I managed to avoid a disaster somehow. Thank God.
But if it were French, then
Connor tried to argue back. He still hadn't learned his lesson. I accidentally let slip what I had overheard. Mitchell, our guy in charge of French business, said this about you. He seems arrogant. He may be fast but makes a lot of mistakes. Just because he can speak French doesn't mean he can do the job. It's troublesome if he can't perform well despite his language skills.
Really?
Also, your French is very difficult to understand. I find it hard to comprehend at times, and Mitchell was saying the same thing, and it's causing problems at work. I heard that the department head is planning to suggest that I take over as the contact person until you make progress. Honestly, you're just adding more work for me. After speaking, I looked at Connor, who looked beaten up. I wondered why no one had pointed this out to him before. I paused and turned to face Connor directly. Language is a tool for communication that should be used with the right mindset. There's nothing special about being able to communicate, so what good does it do to flaunt it? You didn't graduate from Sorbonne only because of your French, right? It was because you studied hard and learned to do things using your French. To encourage Connor, who seemed down, I gently patted him on the back. I've made plenty of mistakes in the past, too. Being a high school dropout, I've been mocked many times. But that doesn't mean I've been continuously ridiculed until now. I have worked hard and overcome those obstacles to get where I am today. Connor, you're still young, so it's okay to make mistakes. Just make sure you don't repeat the same ones. Connor, that angry, arrogant young man, was no longer there. He looked dejected, staring down and contemplating my words. Eventually, he quietly nodded in agreement. Satisfied with his response, I turned back to my desk. All right, let's get back to work. It's going to be all right. We'll send the revised document and continue to give our best.
Yes?
Connor replied softly. From that moment on, Connor and I didn't argue anymore and were together in good spirits. When we finished, it was pitch dark. Usually, I would prepare to leave with a sense of accomplishment, but today there was still a place I had to go with Connor. Nervously, we knocked on the door right in front of us. It was President's office. Knock, knock.
Come in.
Wesley and Connor here.
I'll come in.
Thank you, sir.
Hello?
The two of us opened the door to the president's office. The president had an angry expression on his face. Yes, it was about today's mistake. The president had been informed, and so we had to see him.
What were you thinking?
Connor, standing still, got an earful from the president. He had been pale earlier, but now, standing before the president, Connor's complexion went from pale to completely white. He looked like a corpse, with his head bowed, fists clenched, and tears held back. I stood by Connor's side, lowering my head deeply alongside him, until the president stopped speaking. Sir, I apologize sincerely. Connor's overeagerness was partly my fault as well. I didn't instruct him properly. From now on, I will be vigilant and make sure to never repeat our mistake. I apologized profusely. Seeing me like that, the president sighed and sat down in his chair, appearing somewhat troubled.
Because it's you, Wesley, I will let it slide this time. However, Connor, if you make the same mistake again, you will have to resign from the company. Be prepared for that.
Connor raised his head and looked at the president. The president nodded as if to reassure him.
Thank you. I will pay utmost attention to avoid any further mistakes. Thank you very much.
Thank Wesley, not me. Well, both of you must be tired today. Go home now and rest up for more work tomorrow.
Yes, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir. We bowed again and quietly left the president's office. As soon as we stepped out of the office, Connor turned towards me and said,
Mr. Wesley, thank you so much.
I truly appreciated his humility. He was like a completely different person. It was as if Connor had been reborn. I waved my hand, saying it was fine, and started getting ready to leave. With a determined look, he addressed me respectfully.
Mr. Wesley, please let me continue learning beside you. Let me observe and learn from you. Please be my mentor. I beg you.
I was delighted at these words, feeling Connor's appreciation of me. Make sure to observe and learn.
Yes.
This incident was a turning point for Connor, and he became more humble. It was as if he had been transformed into a different person. He stopped boasting about himself and started listening to others. He would immediately consult with me whenever any trouble arose. That important project progressed smoothly without any problem. I also realized, working closely with him, that he was incredibly intelligent. He didn't graduate from Sorbonne for nothing. He was quick-witted and was able to effectively apply what he learned. He was an exceptionally talented individual. And since I was curious about his French language skills, which I thought were not good, I pointed it out to him. He earnestly made efforts to improve his French, which became much more comprehensible. It's difficult to correct one's foreign language habits, but he seemed to have practiced diligently. I had Mitchell, the French liaison, speak with him on the phone as a test, and Mitchell was greatly impressed. He gave his seal of approval, saying his French was now reliable. In this way, my workload decreased, and now I can take time off whenever I want and enjoy traveling abroad with my wife while still doing my best at work. Everyone makes mistakes. It's something inevitable. I believe what matters is what you do next about your mistake. If you're not afraid of making mistakes and keep trying again and again, it will be fine. I learned this valuable lesson at this stage of my life, that it is more important to own up to and learn from your mistakes than to hide them.